Hello everyone, welcome to another UKGN podcast. I'm Zoidberg. This week we attended Play Expo in Manchester, and I'll be giving you our report of that day shortly. We're also introducing a new feature to our podcast where we discuss one of our favourite retro games. And for our first choice, we've opted for a game that's celebrating its 10th birthday this week. As always, we'll give you a rundown of the latest gaming news and tell you all about the new games that we played in the last 7 days. Hopefully you'll find it informative and entertaining, so stay tuned. To start this episode off, let's talk about Play Expo. This is an event that's been running for a number of years now, and we've attended every one since 2012, including a couple of jaunts up to Blackpool. The biggest change this year was the location, and instead of the usual home of Event City, we now had to travel to the central complex. It's a smaller venue, and consequently the event itself was more intimate, and if event fatigue is a thing, then I'm definitely starting to suffer from it. I didn't find a lot to enjoy this time around, with everything seeming overly familiar. I should point out that if this was your first experience of a gaming expo, then there was plenty to see and enjoy, but my disappointment means that I may have to skip the next one. We shall see. That doesn't mean that there wasn't anything good. First thing to mention is Antstream, which was being touted as a retro gaming version of Netflix, where games are streamed directly to whichever device you are using. There was an enthusiastic team on hand to showcase how it works, and a huge library of games already included. The big announcement of the weekend was that Matthew Smith, designer of Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy, confirmed that his games would be available on the system too. Depending on how much the subscription costs when it launches, I'm definitely interested. You should check it out on Kickstarter. The indie game section was sadly sparse, but one game that did catch my eye was Pacer. This is a futuristic racer that's heavily inspired by Wipeout, and the developers have even joined forces with the Designers Republic to enhance the visual design. It's fast, playable and smooth, with a promise that Xbox One X and PS4 Pro will support full 4K at 60 frames a second. I thoroughly enjoyed it, although at this stage I did think that the weapons were a little disappointing. Pacer is currently scheduled for a release later in the year. Pacer joins a long list of games that have impressed us at the show. Here are 6 other games that we first played at Play Expo. First up is Lumo, which grabbed our attention by channeling the style of isometric Spectrum classics like Night Law and Head Over Heels. It wears its retro influences proudly, and by giving players a choice of control styles, it doesn't feel out of place in the modern era. It's also hard as nails, and it will take some real dedication to complete. There's even a mode that allows you to play with a limited number of lives and no save points. Pan-dimensional Congo Combat is a supremely addictive slice of arcade brilliance. It's a single-screen score challenge where movement is your weapon. Enemies are destroyed by making contact with your trailing tail, and once you learn how to play you won't be able to put it down. It's all accompanied by a thumping soundtrack, and isn't kidding when it recommends that you play with headphones on. Wolverblade's excellent cartoon visual style disguises a brutal brawler that plays like an update of Golden Axe. It may well have taken a few years to be released after we first saw it, but the wait was definitely worth it. It's challenging and fun, especially if you play it in local co-op. And when you finish the story, there's always the survival mode to keep you coming back for more. It's also a surprisingly deep history lesson, with pages and pages of lore that's well worth checking out. If Wolverblade was Golden Axe, then Raging Justice is Final Fight. This was a mainstay of Play Expo for a few years before it was picked up by Team 17, and it was good to see that the game's rough edges disappeared throughout its development. Like the games that inspired it, it's a touch repetitive, but it supports up to 3 players on a single console, and there's also reason to play again, as each level has a number of challenges and side missions for you to attempt as well. Iron Fisticle is essentially a medieval themed take on Smash TV, and maintains its retro feel by only allowing you to shoot in the 8 directions. I remember its appearance at Play Expo well, as there was a score challenge on it, which I ultimately came second in despite a few attempts. A remake cum sequel of it was released on consoles last year, renamed Iron Cryptical, and that too is well worth checking out. Finally, Snake Pass's appearance was a genuine surprise, as it comes from one of our favourite developers. Sumo Digital are more well known for their work with Sega, but this original property felt, and still feels, unique in the world of platform games. This is down to how you control the snake at its centre, gaining speed by slithering left and right and wrapping yourself around poles to climb. Working out the best way to navigate each section is frustrating but incredibly rewarding. If you've yet to play any of those games, you really should do so. But moving on, it's time for the news. 5 years after stating that they saw no value in the service for console players, Sony have announced that EA Access is coming to the PlayStation 4 in July. The subscription service offers players the chance to get early access to every game on EA's release schedule, with a 10-hour trial of each one. It's set to arrive about the same time that Madden NFL 20 will be debuting. You also get a large selection of full games to download and play for as long as you remain a member, including Star Wars Battlefront 2, Mirror's Edge Catalyst and Burnout Paradise. I've been a member since it launched on Xbox and haven't had to buy a single game from the publisher since. I'm frankly surprised that it's taken this long to come to the PlayStation. My only concern is, as I'm already a member on Xbox, am I going to have to subscribe again on PlayStation? This month's games for the Nintendo Online service have been announced, increasing the ever-expanding library of titles for you to play. 3 new NES titles will be available from May 15, including Donkey Kong Jr., the sequel to the arcade classic, Versus Excitebike, which adds split-screen play and a track editor to the already brilliant Racer, and Clue Clue Land, which I've not actually heard of before, but being a Nintendo game, I'll definitely give it a go. Available to download now on the PS4 is a demo of the forthcoming Everybody's Golf VR, but if you're thinking of buying it, you should probably not bother. Disappointingly, it doesn't actually let you play. You're given a run through of the tutorial and set free to practice your swing on the driving range, but nothing more. We would have expected to play at least one hole on the demo, but instead it just lets you stand on the first tee and look out onto the course. It definitely looks and sounds exactly as you would want an Everybody's Golf game to do so, and the move controls work well, but with the game out in 2 weeks you'd be better off waiting. Now it's time to see what new games we've been playing this week. Shakedown Hawaii almost didn't make this week's show, after a system error meant that the PS4 version never turned up on the UK store. Fortunately, it's also available on Switch and PC via the Epic Store, so we just got one of those instead. For the uninitiated, it's the follow-up to Retro City Rampage, but updates everything so that it looks like it's from the SNES era. There's an amazing attention to detail in the graphics, especially the animation, and the gameplay offers a nice variety of missions and sensible controls. Because of the top-down view, it can be tricky to see what's coming when you're racing around the streets in a faster car, but the same was true of the original GTA as well, so that's not really a criticism. Mordhau took the world by surprise when it launched on Steam, becoming the 11th most played game in only a couple of days. An online hack and slasher might not be my type of game, but it's hard not to see why it succeeded. There's a depth to the combat that you simply wouldn't expect, although I do prefer For Honor in this area, and everything has a high level of polish. To be honest, it's nice to see a game launch that's this well made and finished after years of broken early access releases. "Oh, it's trying to be Yu-Gi-Oh, is it?" was the first thing that our resident UKGN anime expert said upon witnessing Super Dragon Ball Heroes. And it's certainly true that this card battle feels very familiar. As you'd expect from Bandai Namco, it looks great and knows how to make the battles suitably epic, but your enjoyment of it will depend entirely on whether you know your Gokus from your Gohans. Although even if you do, you probably won't remember it when you're done. How hilarious do you find underwear-related puns? Your answer to that question will probably determine how much you enjoy brief battles from Juicy Cupcake. It's a game that's been designed with local competitive play in mind, as it barely caters for solo gamers. While there is fun to be had when played with a group of friends, this type of game has been done before and much better by the likes of Towerfall. It's therefore not one we can recommend. The Adventures of Bertram Fiddle is a point-and-click adventure set in the Victorian-era London, and I didn't stop smiling the whole time I was playing it. While none of the puzzles are particularly taxing, the characters and writing are of a consistently high standard that it doesn't matter. Whether the level of humour can sustain itself through however many episodes the developers are intending to make is a question that simply can't be answered yet, but I'll certainly be playing the next one. Mountain bike racing is an area ripe for video game treatment, so Descenders from Rage Squid is a welcome arrival after its short time in game preview. It can be great fun to pedal down the tracks, and the difficulty seems to be picked just right. Latter tracks will test your skills to the max, and because they're procedurally generated you never know what's around the next corner. It's not a game that I'd have bought, but its inclusion in Xbox Game Pass means that it's definitely worth a look. Let's wrap up this week's show by going a bit retro. May 9th, 2009 saw the release of PopCap's Plants vs Zombies on the PC, and that's something we simply had to celebrate. It was a unique and simplified take on the tower defence game, where the waves of enemies attacked along a straight line from right to left. Your defensive turrets all took the form of plants, ranging from pea shooters and sunflowers to corn launchers and cherry bombs. It was all perfectly balanced and challenging, and all sprinkled with the customary PopCap sheen. The stars of the show were undoubtedly the zombies themselves, which come in a huge number of types and are presented in an art style that's instantly recognisable to this day, although the estate of the King of Pop clearly didn't like them. If you're lucky enough to complete the adventure mode, you were also treated to an end credits song that's easily the rival to the Portal games. A sequel was released in 2013 on mobile devices. Although the gameplay remained unchanged and the new locations and zombies were welcome, it was all ruined by EA's aggressive pay-to-win microtransactions, and we can't really recommend that you play it. The series' legacy has survived to this day though, and the original game remains one of our favourites. The two Garden Warfare spin-offs are also worth a look, although they do offer a completely different style of gameplay. So that's it for this week's podcast. We hope you like the additions to the format. We'd love to hear what your memories are of Plants vs Zombies, or maybe you disagree of something that we've said. Drop us a line on Twitter or Facebook at UK Gaming Network to tell us what you think. We'll be back next week with, amongst other things, a look at Rage 2. Thanks for listening.